Came again to Joshua to the host at Shiloh. Joshua cast lots for them in Shiloh before the Lord. And there Joshua divided the land unto the children of Israel according to their divisions. Shiloh, the place. Number one, the place. An important place in this time. It was an important place. The meaning of the word Shiloh is place of rest or place of peace. You can write that down. Shiloh means place of rest or peace, either one. Either one you want to put down, place of rest or place of peace. Indicating, or I guess that's the best word, indicating that the house of the Lord, which is what Shiloh was at this time. Shiloh is, from what I understand, a plateau region that was the house of the Lord. It was not a particularly large area. Nothing in that day was a particularly large area as far as cities go. But it meant house of rest. I can't help but think that that ought to be what the church is today. A house of peace. A house of rest. When we come into the buildings, when we come into the campus even, when we come onto the campus of the church, there ought to be a sense of peace. Now I realize that the Lord does not inhabit this building. He inhabits our persons. But still, this ought to be a place where when we come together and where two or three are gathered, there He is in the midst of them. Where two or three are gathered in His name. Let me qualify that. Gathered in His name. He's there in the midst of it. And if He's here in the midst of us, it ought to be a place of peace. Even during business meetings, it ought to be a place of peace. And how many churches, now, since I've been here, man, it's been good. We've had some things when there's been questions whenever we went to remodel the church. There were questions, rightfully so. Not a problem with that. But you have heard of or been involved in horror stories about business meetings where people got up and are screaming and shouting at each other, and people walk out and people are mad, and it's anything but a house of peace. But this was a place of rest, place of peace. It was centrally located in the land. If you look at where Shiloh is, it's not right in the middle of the land, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close as a central location to everything. I didn't print a map this week, sorry, but you've got enough maps. You can probably find Shiloh on one of those maps and see that it's centrally located. But it's a centrally located. That way, those who were far north, those who were far south, east and west, which weren't near as far as north and south, but they could all come at the time that it was provided. Letter C. It was the place of public worship. It was the place of public worship. Now, these next 3 points use the word was, but we can replace that with the word is. There was a call for public worship, and there is a call for public worship. The tabernacle was a precisely designed and constructed building and setup because of a lot of things. Because of the way God wanted them done, everything, and we've looked at the tabernacle in years past, everything involved with it is a picture of Christ. From the white sheet or white boundary around to the sacrifice, to the brazen altar, the tabernacle itself, the fabric, the construction, the laver, the menorah, the table of showbread, the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant, all of that is a picture of Christ in different ways. And there was a call for public worship. And with all of that, why would God bring them in? Whole congregation, children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle of the congregation there. Why would they set it up if there was not a call for worship? There was a call for worship. Whenever Joshua sends them out, he says, you go and you scout the land, you describe it, divide it up, and come back, and here in the midst of the host, we'll cast lots. I think that's verse 8 or 9. Verse 8. That I may here cast lots for you before the Lord in Shiloh. And so there is a reason, there's a call for public worship. There is a call for public worship, for what we call corporate worship in the church. Forsake not, or not forsaking, the assembling of yourselves together as the manner of some is, like other people do. Don't forget, forsake, disregard the assembling together of worship, corporate worship, like other people do, like others do, but exhorting one another. There's a call for it. Yeah, I didn't finish the verse. And so much the more as you see the day approaching. I guess I'll say it here as good as anywhere. I was thinking about this in my study, and I thought about the time that Paul wrote that. And they met on the first day of the week. And they met probably first thing in the morning. That was the resurrection. That's what they thought, that's probably first thing in the morning. And it was a small group of believers. They didn't have cars. They didn't have transportation. They probably didn't have a donkey or a horse to ride on. So they went as far as walking would take them to meet, if it was reasonable. And if they couldn't get to that one, they probably started one in their house. And that's where you get the cottage prayer meetings and things like that, because in that day they couldn't go 20 miles. They couldn't drive. They couldn't go from Carlton to Hull on a Sunday morning. And I wonder, I think about in that day, could they have possibly imagined? Could they have possibly imagined that one day there would be meeting places, churches, that thousands of people could meet in? That people would be able to would have the opportunity to go to church, to meet with other believers 3 times a week, 5 times a week for revivals, or missions conferences, Bible conferences. That people would be able to drive 400 or 500 miles for a conference to hear multiple preachers preach the Word of God. I wonder what the people in the early church, what their reaction to what we have now would have been. Well, we know what our reaction is. Look around. This is our reaction. It's not that there aren't enough people in our community to fill every church in this room, in this building, and every church in that building, and every church in that every seat in that building, this building, that building. There. And so much the more. What are we doing in churches? We're canceling services. We're canceling services, saying, we're not going to have that service. We're not going to have that service. There's a call for it. And so much the more as the day approaches that the Lord's coming back, we need it more and more. But it seems like the more wicked, humanly speaking, perception-wise, the more wicked our world gets, the less we have it. And that's not at all what Hebrews 10:25 is saying. It's saying so much more. So much more as you see the day approaching. There's a call for public worship. There was an order to public worship. Have you ever been in a church service and you thought, what in the world is going on here? I have. I've been to services where I thought, now I know we were joking about Sunday morning during fellowship time. This this group back here just, whatever was going on. It was just going and going and going, and that's good. That's actually a good thing. But I've been in services where I thought, I don't know about this. I'm kind of uncomfortable with what's happening in this service because it just seems to be no order to it. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes kind of situation. And number 3, there was a purpose of public worship. I don't have a place to write these down, and if you want to, you can. I give you 2 purposes, and we could list probably many more than that. But one of the purposes of corporate or public worship is to develop a sense of unity. When you look at this group, I mean, you're talking a lot of people coming together. You're talking about the 12 tribes of Israel coming together for worship at the tabernacle. You're talking about a lot of people. You're talking about tribes of cattle herders, cattlemen. You're talking about tribes of warriors and different things, and they're all coming together, and they all have, and they're identified by their father. They're identified by Reuben. We are the tribe, the family of Reuben. Reuben was the oldest. Well, we're the family of Benjamin. Benjamin was the baby, the favorite. Well, we're Ephraim and Manasseh. We're Joseph's kids. Joseph was the ruler in Egypt. All of these. And when they came together, one of the purposes was unity. A single purpose. And when we come together in here, which is one reason, there's a reason that there's order given in the New Testament to church things. Because when you get every man and woman did that which was right in their own eyes, and you give everybody a microphone, a chance to say whatever they want, it can be a very dangerous thing because you can create disunity real quick in that. But there ought to be a unity. And the thing that unifies us would be number 2, the purpose, is to glorify God. Most of you are writing it down, so I'll give you a chance. To glorify God. Whether therefore ye eat or drink or whatsoever ye do all to the glory of God. I think we were talking about this with Paul and Annette the other night. We went out to eat with them Sunday night. We were talking about this, and I'm not exactly sure how we got to it, but whether therefore you eat or drink. We do that all the time. We do that 3 times a day. Now, I don't know that in this day they did it 3 times a day, but God knew we were going to, and it's still there. Whether therefore you eat or drink. We do that without even thinking about it. And even in those little, menial, everyday, don't even think about it, we just do it. In those things, we're supposed to glorify God. In what and the way, I think, we eat and drink. And if we're supposed to glorify God in those things that we don't even think about doing, it's just natural, it's just what we do, and the point is, it ought to just infiltrate our entire life. And whenever we come into this place, and I don't know that this happens in very many Christians' lives, that whenever we come into church, the thought ought to be, now I know we say things to indicate it, but it just doesn't seem like to me in the church as a whole, and I'm not just talking about this, I'm talking about the church as a whole, that the mindset, not just the mouth, but the mindset, the heart set is, I want to glorify God in this. I just want God to get glory. And I tell you where I see the indication of that. is in singing. People sit in here and we sing songs to as much as we can honor God. And if we can't even take the words of make a joyful noise, glorify the Lord in your, are we going to do it out there? Are we really going to do that? There's a purpose of public worship, and it is to glorify God so that would infiltrate our life here and help us to do that out there. That was the place. Number 2, the problem. The problem. The whole congregation, verse 1, the children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh, set up the tabernacle, congregation was there, land was subdued before them. I think that's a key phrase. The land was subdued. I don't think that means completely under control, because we know that there was still some things to accomplish by verse 3. I think that what it means is there was not war at the time. Because if you look at verse 2, and there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes which had not yet received their inheritance. In verse 3, and Joshua said unto the children of Israel, how long are ye slack to go possess the land which the Lord God of your fathers hath given you? The problem was slackness or complacency. They've been in the land for a few years. They fought some battles. God's given victory. But now things are comfortable. Here we are. Tabernacle set up. We're here at Shiloh, and man, things, the land, nobody's knocking on the door to overtake us. They're all scared of us. Feeling pretty good. Everything's status quo. Feels pretty nice, Joshua, And he says, there's 7 of you tribes. I don't know how he communicated this to, a host of people. But he says, you bunch of lazy bums. You're slack. How long are you going to just sit around and do nothing? When are you going to get up and do something? There was a complacency because everything was okay. Everything was okay. Everything wasn't, they weren't tearing through the land anymore. Things weren't, yeah, we're really doing a job. And things weren't bottom of the rung, oh no, woe is me, oh God, what are you? I was teaching teenagers several years ago, and I was talking about, the difficulties of life, and when we cry out to God, and I said something about, it's a lot easier to cry out to God in the difficult times than it is in the good times, because we just want help, we want help. And Jessica made a great point. She said, but oftentimes it's in the good times that we give God glory, but when things are just okay, we don't really talk about God and consider God very much. And that is exactly what's happening here, and that's exactly where many Christians find themselves. Day to day, it's okay. I don't have any real problems. Nobody's sick. The transmission hasn't gone out again yet. It's got a warranty at least. The engine hadn't blown. Things are pretty good. Things they're not rolling like we have in the past or whatever, but things aren't terrible. They're just okay, so I guess we're doing all right. And it's real easy in those times just to say, I guess we don't really need God right now. And that's exactly, just get complacent, familiar, slackness. And that's exactly where the Israelites, these 7 tribes, probably more than the 7 tribes, but these 7 tribes for sure. He says, how long are you just going to be lazy? I'll give you another thing. I think this was part of the problem, expectation. Let me figure out how to say this. There's a difference in faith and entitlement. Well, God said He was going to fight, so we're just going to sit here and wait for Him to fight for us, I guess. Faith says, well, God, Caleb, God has given me that mountain. Now I'm going to go claim it. Entitlement says, well, God said He's going to give me that mountain. I'm waiting. Lord, what are you going to do? I'm sitting here, I've been waiting for 2 years for this to happen.